In this lesson, we're going to talk about 5 ways you can use pens and markers on your project. So on my layout here, I have used them in a couple different ways. First way is I've used them to create this background here. It's kind of a watercolor effect. We've also done some faux stitching in several different areas. Did a little bit of doodling here on this pre-made tag, and then we've used them to stamp in several different ways to create this large swoosh area and these smaller little sentiments. So let's get started with the first technique, and that's used to do these faux stitching marks. All you need for this is a ruler and a fine tip black pen. So all I do really is just turn my page the way I want to have the faux stitching lined up, line my ruler up to the edge of my cardstock or pattern paper base, and then add my stitches. The one thing you want to be careful to do is to make sure you have generally a very even journaling mark so you don't have long stitches and short stitches. And very simply, you just take your pen and go all the way down wherever you want to add stitching. So this is great if you really love that stitching look, but you're afraid to use your sewing machine on your project, or you don't have a sewing machine. You can very easily have the same look with just a pen and a ruler. In this technique, we're going to use markers to stamp on our project. So what I have here is a photo with a photo mat, and there's a lot of area here where you can stamp. So I have these great brushstroke stamps and these distress markers, which have a fine tip end as well as a brush end. And that's the end that I'm going to use for this, just because it'll allow me to cover the stamp a little bit easier. Quite simply, all you need to do is just brush that marker right onto the stamp. This is really good because you can cover very quickly. And don't worry too much about it drying quickly. These last for a minute or two. And then I'm just going to line it up onto my cardstock and stamp an area. So you can see how easily that went on. Super fun. And you can even get a little bit more detailed with smaller stamps like this one here. I'm going to do the same thing with the brush. Just brush it on and then stamp over that again a few different times. You can see you can probably get three little stamps out of each swipe. So you can go very, very detailed, as little or large as you want. And I'm just going to also add some stamping to this tag here that's already pre-made, the same method. Just by adding my stamp, lightly brushing on. And you want to be careful you don't get into any little tiny creases that there might be on the stamp, because you will have a bit of a buildup and you don't want that. And then I'm just going to stamp right on. So you can take something pre-made or you can make your own very easily with just a couple different markers. In this technique, we're going to use a pen to add some doodles to a pre-made object. So you can use any sort of pen you want. I do like these distress pens. They work really, really well. And I have this pre-cut tag, and I'm just going to add some doodles to it to make it a little bit more unique. I'm going to just draw a little bit of a doodly line on the bottom. And then I'm going to embellish this heart a little bit. So I'm just going to make some little bumps all the way around the outside of the heart. You can see it goes on really, really easy. And even though you bought this pre-made, you've now made it your own by adding some quick and easy doodles. Another thing you can do with a pen like this is add your journaling. And what I like to do is cut out some strips of paper and add my journaling to it just with the journaling pen. And the reason I do this on the strips is because I can move them around on my page if I don't really know where I'm going to place everything. So I'm just going to add some journaling here. And then what I like to do is trim them off with some scissors. Just trim them down so they're a little bit smaller size. And then that way I can play around with where they're going to go on my page. If I want to put them in one area, I can do that. Or if I want to leave them all together, I can do that. If I want to put part of the journaling in one area and part of journaling in the other, then I have the ability to do that. For this technique, we're going to create a watercolor type background with a distress marker and a little bit of water. So what I have here is a distress marker, and I actually have just some leftover. This is just a leftover plastic bag packaging, and this is a little bit thicker one I had from some stickers that I don't use anymore. And it's really great and easy to use that for this. I call it the smushing technique. So you just want to take your distress marker and you just scribble a whole lot of ink onto whichever plastic piece you want to use. And then you want to take just a few drops of water to get that color to work. The key to this is not to use a whole ton of water because you don't want your paper to warp a lot. I'm just going to move this kind of together into one area. And this is where the fun part happens. I flicked it already, so that's one way. And then you just flip it over and you just smush it around. You can lift it and you'll still have a little bit of stuff on there, and you can do the same thing again in all different parts of your page until it's gone. And then the best part is you can just reload and do it all over again. So you just play with it until you're completely comfortable of how it's covered. You can mix colors, you can leave it all the same. It's completely up to you. So that's 5 ways and techniques that we've used markers on your project. I hope you've enjoyed learning 5 ways to use 5 basic supplies. You can find all these products and more at Scrapbook.com. Thanks so much for joining me.